Welcome to the Hustle Harder Show. Super excited for this episode. Today we have Devin Ramos joining us. We sit in Clarksville. We're on Franklin Street, where we were a second ago. We are in Clarksville, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville. My first time to Clarksville, so this has been fun. We just had a great lunch at a local spot down the street, and excited to jump into you and your story. I'll let you kind of do a self intro, and then we can pick it up from there.
Cool. That sounds good. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming out up front. I think it's really neat. I've never had somebody ask me to be on their show and then fly out to do lunch with me and then host me in my spot. So that's a really cool thing. I think it says a lot about who you are and who you guys are. But yeah, let's jump in. So I am here in Clarksville because of the military. So over a decade ago, I joined the Marine Corps initially. I was like many entrepreneurs trying to figure out like, what's my purpose in life? Like, how do I make money? How do I sustain myself and grow? And like, where do I go? And I was in school and I had some friends that had some siblings that served in the military. And it was, I remember this pivotal point where I was like, I never thought about the military. That's an option. Because where I had grown up, I didn't know a lot of people that joined the military. I really didn't know anybody, I didn't know peers, anything like that. I grew up in a small rural community, grew up on a farm, and so just that particular community, we're in a whole lot of service members. And so when I was open to this idea of joining the military, very quickly, I saw a little behind the curtains and I was like, man, there's a lot, like, this is me. Like, I like to serve people. Why would I not serve my country? And it really boiled down to one question that I asked myself. And it was, if, when I'm 40 years old, it's funny because I'm almost 40 now, right? This was back when I was 19. When I'm 40 years old, if I look back and I say, hey, I didn't serve my country, like just reflecting back on my life, am I going to be cool or not cool? And I was like, yeah, dude, no way. And so the moment like that happened one night, I was like all in. And so I enlisted in the Marine Corps, was trying to figure out how I was going to do everything. So I started out in the Marine Corps Reserve and that just grew, like most things historically for me, I'll get a taste of it and then it pulls me in and I'm just obsessed. Right. So that happened with the Marine Corps. And I saw a lot of these people that I looked up to, I thought were elite. I didn't know them personally, but like I looked up to them, kind of felt like I knew them through other people. I'd hear about them and they all had this thing in common where they were like Navy SEALs or they were Green Berets or they were recon Marines. And they just lived in this different environment, operating in this different environment. And when I started hearing about that and I looked at what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be, where people I wanted to be around, there's just this deep desire to, I had this vision of waking up and operating with people that wanted to continue to get better, wanted to, do things that they seemingly thought were impossible, physically, mentally, which have you. And so that led me to go to Special Forces Assessment and Selection. I did that, and that was a large part of not just my career, but kind of like who I am, over the years, my perceptions of identity and what that means have shifted and changed. But, I saw myself as a special forces soldier during that time, and I was all about it. And like most things, I strive to try to do my best. And, I want, the achievement. I want to prove to myself that I can do it. I want the adventure. I want, all those cool things that, a lot of people in that position look to. Like I was all about it. And what that led to was a point in my career, it was about 5 years ago, where I kind of had to say, like, am I going to do this forever? If I'm not going to do this forever, where am I going to go? Like this, this pays the bills. Reflecting back on when I was in college, like I had figured it out. I had a family now. I had kids. Like I was able to sustain myself, take care of them. And it was kind of like, what am I going to do both for this like mission driven part of me, but also like financially. Like I never built a retirement plan. I wasn't one of the individuals that thought like, oh, I'll just do 20 and get a pension. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I didn't think that way. And so for me, I was like, well, if I'm not going to stay in and I don't have a pension, what do I do?
Got to do something.
Yeah, you got to do something, right? And so that right there, like the questions I was asking myself around, like, what am I going to do? Like, where's the mission? Like, what is my purpose again? It was kind of like took me back to, my days at the university, like the same thing where I was like trying to figure it out. And a huge part of it too, I want to mention is my faith. So like through that whole journey, I ended up going to a church and like kind of changing the way I thought about God and my faith. And like, so my values started shifting and changing. And the purpose-driven portion of me became more important and more of an emphasis. And so, the same was true during that period of my life here, 5 or so years ago. And so thinking about that, I was like, man, well, I want to spend time with my wife and my kids. And like, wouldn't it be cool if we had, more flexibility, more freedom? And I just assumed if you were an entrepreneur, I knew it was hard, or I had heard it was hard. And I did start a landscaping company to put myself through a portion of college when I was 19, largely because of the flexibility. I was like, it started out very simple. Hey, if I can mow like, I don't know, 20 lawns a week, that's pretty decent. That's one less job I have to have because I had multiple jobs at the time. And so I kind of like thought back to that and I was like, well, I did give myself flexibility. I didn't have freedom, right? Because if I had employees, but like I was still mowing lawns. If I wasn't mowing lawns, if I wasn't selling, the maintenance contracts, I wasn't doing nothing. So it wasn't that I had freedom, but I did have flexibility, And so I thought back to that and I was like, man, I could probably do that again. And I had a buddy who was also a Green Beret. So he had some sort of, I say that to say he had some sort of influence. Like he said, bared weight.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hey man, didn't you have like an Airbnb or something? Because at one point, funny story, I was out of school. I had to live in North Carolina for a few months and I knew he was around. And sometimes in the military, we get the option to like live out of Airbnbs and things like that. So I had that option. So I called him. I'm like, hey, can I rent your Airbnb? Like it'd help you out. That'd be sweet. And then I'd probably get a sweet place. I don't know. He's like, as a matter of fact, I do have a place. So this guy puts me in this house that's partially renovated. He's in the middle of turning it over. And he's deployed right now. And I didn't really care. I thought it was funny, but I called him and I'm like, yo, dude, you don't got water on in this place? And it's like the middle of winter. I show up. He just gives me the code. I go there. And anyways, it worked out. But I remember seeing that and I was like, looking at this house and he's like, oh, dude, man, I'm going to do so good, blah, blah, blah. And he's like telling me about it when he got back home from the deployment. And I'm like, this is kind of like a piece of junk, dude. And he's like, no. You don't see what I see. So this was several years later. I'm reflecting back on that. And I call him and I'm like, I remember that house. Like, you invested in real estate. What's the deal with this real estate? So he points me to some resources. And then I start watching HGTV and doing all the like cliche stuff, you know, and I'm like, well, I'm going to buy some rentals and I'll have passive income and, things that are true, but it was just in that sense kind of traditional for me. And I'm like, yeah, this is what we'll do. And so I attempted to get my wife's buy-in, which I did after a certain amount of time. And that right there really planted the seed of entrepreneurship for me. That's really the pivotal moment where I started to like make a change. So as that's happening and I'm like, oh, this might be an option, or then I started going crazy with it. I'm like, well, we could run Airbnbs. Well, I knew about flipping houses. I could flip houses and I still wasn't really thinking about it like a business. It was more just like opportunity. I had friends that were doing things with the stock market. They were selling options and things like that. And not that I was ever interested in anything like that, but it's almost like that was the point where I became more aware. Like I was like, oh, these are things people are doing, which up to that point, it was just, I had like blinders on, like, man, I was making, I don't know, 70 to 90,000 a year at this time. Because we deploy in combat zones, there's additional pay, there's like per diem and things like that. So most years, I'd be gone most of the year, but I'd clear over 100,000, so it wasn't like I wasn't making some money at the time, but I wasn't making a lot. But the thing was I was good with that. I was like, dude, 30 years from now, if I'm making 120K, whatever. And that started to change. I was like, I don't
not
want
good
this.
enough.
No, and it wasn't so much it wasn't good enough. I felt like I was, if I'm being honest, I felt like I was shortchanging my family and myself.
Yeah.
I still didn't see money as a tool at that point, I don't think. Or maybe I did, I didn't realize it. But I was like, I can do better. Not that money is the measure of success or achievement or anything like that. But it is, at least from where I'm standing now, it is a measure of, certain things. And like for business, like, it is a measure of a certain amount of success, right? And so just thinking about that, I like the idea that I didn't have a cap. So when I thought about real estate, no cap on what I could potentially earn. Staying where I'm at now, man, I knew exactly what it looked like for the next 10 years of my life.
Yeah.
The military, I don't know how the corporate world is, but the military, I would think more than the corporate world, because we get paid on this like base schedule that it doesn't matter what job you do. It just matters, what your rank is. And so like, I literally knew I could tell you, hey, 6 years from now, if I continue down this path, I'll make X salary per year, and then it'll increase this much. It's like $200 every 2 years or something.
Yeah, it's very transparent, right? Like that scale is just known. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I knew, what will life look like? Well, then I'd look at my, mentors that came before me that were, 1, 2 ranks above me, 6, 7, 8 years ahead of me. And I'm like, oh, that's what I'll be. I'll look just like that. Not that there was anything wrong with that, but I say that to say that I knew. And I was like, that's not what I want. And so I started educating myself, and simultaneously during this time, I was working a pretty cool job. I was deployed, and it was cool in the sense of I was operating by myself. I was living by myself in a foreign country. I had my team there. I wasn't totally by myself, but I was in a whole nother location. Like I was just kind of doing my own thing. I say that to say I had a lot of autonomy, and though I loved it, there was a heavy burden that I had to bear. And there was a lot on my plate, multiple things going on. And I just kind of got to the point where I was operating in this environment where like every day, when you think about somebody who's burned out in business, that's kind of where I was. I was trying to set up this, we call it a platform, basically like, think of it as like a team to do things. It's kind of like a small business type of thing, right? We're setting up an office. And there were certain resources I had that were restricted. I was constrained, and I needed to do certain things with those constraints. And I had to influence certain people. And I worked in this environment that was very similar to corporate world, in that you had like State Department and this federal agency and this agency and that agency. And there was a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of hierarchy within those organizations, across those organizations. And I say that to say I was like learning very fast. And what I didn't like was every day there was like so many fires, and everything everybody needed was the most urgent and important thing. And some people were aware, rank wise, I was like one of the lowest, if not the lowest ranking guy there. Image wise, I was not, because it's kind of in our nature as Green Berets to get put in a situation where your rank doesn't necessarily, like we do rank faster, but you're only going to rank so fast. But our level of responsibility for what we actually do for our job is a lot, So at this point, in this embassy, there was a charge d'affaires. It's the equivalent of an ambassador. She was the person that I was going to, that people that outranked me were were coming to me because I had the relationship with her to get things approved. And I say that to say, like, she had no clue what rank I was. She could have looked it up, but like, she took me at face value. She's like, Devin's the guy that knows this. When I need to talk anything, you know, special operations in this footprint, I'll go to Devin for these things, like these operations, blah, blah, blah. So what I had to do was like learn their world, learn how to talk to them. It was like a different language. And I got to this point where I wasn't sure how to identify what was actually a real priority and what was like just fluff, and how I could keep, you know, what was important to me, my team, and everybody I was representing, like moving forward. And so I kind of had this moment where the pressure of that all kind of got me to the point where I was like, dude, I don't even care anymore. I'm just going to start like ignoring people and do what I think is important. And like what happened in that moment was nothing. And the first time I was kind of like, this is weird. And then I did it again. And then I started doing it like with emails. And what I realized was like, this machine was just moving fast. All these organizations were moving fast. There were a few key things that were really important. But like, I kind of felt like everybody was just being a poor steward of their time. And I didn't know in the moment, but, you know, reflecting now, that hit me big time. And I was like, all right, I'm done with this. And so two things came out of that. I was like, I got to operate differently. I got to learn how to be productive and not just, you know, be on autopilot trying to do 100 million things every day because it's just not realistic. And I also need to get out of an environment like this. And I want to be in a position where I'm creating the environment and I'm not like a slave to this environment, you know? And so at that point, I knew for sure, I was like, I'm getting out of the military. I don't know what's next. Maybe it's real estate. And, you know, that was kind of like the birth of.
That's a big decision,
journey.
right? I mean, you know, how long were you in the service?
Yeah. So I did 13 years active duty, and then I had 2.5 in the Marine Corps Reserve. So, you know, all in all, like, you know, 15.
Yeah. And that's, you know, that's a big portion of the time you've been on this planet at that point, right? So, you know, that's kind of all you know. And then, you know, just the decision to, you know, to stay or leave, I would imagine is like there's a lot of weight to that. And so once you kind of come to that decision, then it's like, what's next, right? And so how did you make the choice? And what I'm sure you thought about some other opportunities, options, what have you. You know, what really drew you to real estate? And then you mentioned earlier you started educating yourself. I'm curious what you used, what tools and books, and, you know, how did you, you know, get that education, you know, kind of on your own?
Yeah. So it definitely wasn't on my own. Like, I took the action. I'll take the credit for that. But my buddy Mike, the other Green Beret I was talking about, he told me two things. He said, hey, you should read Rich Dad Poor Dad and check out BiggerPockets. And I was like, bigger what? And so I did those two things. And like, you know, I'm sure there's several of the listeners here that'll resonate with. And the Rich Dad Poor Dad changed the way I started thinking. And it sort of aligned with some of the other thoughts I was already having about like flexibility and what I thought was freedom. And so I learned a little bit, and immediately, I think it's just how God made me. Like, I'm looking for ROI. You know, I'm looking to be a good steward of my resources. And so I started listening to episodes about like successful BRRRRs, you know, buy, rent, rehab, refinance, repeat. And I was like, that's my guy. That's what I want to do, you know, because I wasn't in a rush. Well, I didn't understand I needed to create cash, first off. I didn't have cash. I had invested in the stock market, and, you know, I'd done some investments here and there. Any lump sums of cash I would get at that point, I'd usually get like on deployment. Like, again, there's additional pays, there's things like that. We occasionally we'll get bonuses when we re-enlist and things like that. So I had got chunks of cash here and there, and I, you know, put them in the stock market. I bought a brand new truck one year. This was way before. Not way before. This was like a year or 2 years before. I'd done things like that, but I didn't realize I needed cash. So I was just like, well, I don't know. People are buying houses without cash, so maybe I can do it. But I also want to hold the asset. And so then for me, the question was, well, how do I buy a house? I don't really have much cash, but I got some with what I have. And how do I keep it? And then how do I refinance to get that cash back so I can do it again? Because that seems to be the most logical strategy. So that's where we started. And for whatever reason, I thought I had to go off market, but it ended up working out because a lot of times when I'm looking to do something new, I kind of see it for the skills involved. And I really enjoy learning new things and like honing new skills. So like, doing this podcast stuff, right? Like having my own podcast now, I'm like, well, how do I become good at interviewing? And how do I become good at this and that, And this was kind of similar. I was like, well, what if I could find somebody who had a problem off market? I could negotiate a deal and then I could close that deal without the MLS. Like to me, that was like the coolest thing at that point. And so that just like drew me in, started looking off market and, found one and then kind of started hitting some resistance. I did end up burring it, but it took a lot longer. And I had realized, man, I'm going to move very slow if I'm doing this one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of stepped out in faith at that point and was like, well, I still don't really have the cash, but what if I can find another deal and then I'll figure it out. And through that process, I realized the importance of marketing. Looking back now, I can see what I was doing wrong. But at that time, I was like, I'm trying and nothing's happening. But I'll be honest, if you ask me, like, Devin, how many people were you asking if you could buy their house a day? It was maybe like 1 or 2 a month. Like I wasn't out there telling people, hey, I'm looking for houses. Do you know any houses? I wasn't sending direct mail. I wasn't doing none of that. I was more so just kind of like looking for opportunity, but not creating it. And when you're in that position, it's hard to see that you are, but like once you spent tens of $1,000s on direct mail and you've, been told no 200 times and it doesn't affect you as nearly as much at this point. And you like start to do these things. At that point, you can look back and be like, oh, I wasn't getting any deals because I wasn't making any offers. But like, it is so hard to, in that moment, know it.
Yeah. You only know what you know. Right. Mm-hmm. And you've got to start somewhere. And that's the, you got started with one, took longer than you thought. That's common on the first one. But, it's an accumulation of all this stuff, especially, if you're kind of trying to figure it out. I know you weren't alone, right? I assume you had some mentors or folks that you were, and I know later on you got into some of the masterminds. I know that's how we got to know each other. And I want to touch on that as well, but you got to get it going somewhere. And I think, taking the action is the biggest thing. And then you start to figure out what you don't know, right? And, obviously you're somebody that likes to push themselves and really, move your limits and your capabilities. And, what a perfect place to do that. Real estate is constantly evolving. And there's so many disciplines required to be really successful. So you started with that first one. How many years ago was that?
Yeah. So that was in the end of 2020, 2021. So what's that, 4 or 5 years, somewhere around there.
And then, talk to us about where your business is right now.
Yeah. So what that led to was me building a business around primarily like marketing and sales, right? Like running marketing and focusing on acquisitions. I've got like a dozen plus rentals in our portfolio now. Last year we did around 40 deals. I think like 60% of them were flips. 40% were wholesales, pretty sure. Now you got me second guessing that. Somewhere around there. But like, just to give you an idea. So, I mean, we'll do like between 20 to, we'll say 30 deals this year. We're intentionally doing I mean, we'll do over 20, but we'll do probably around 30 deals this year. We're intentionally doing less this year, trying to have more profit margin. That's kind of how it's played out so far. So during that time, I learned how to do the marketing and sales piece. I've wholesaled, quite a bit, predominantly wholesaled across like the entire range. But because we had done the rentals first, I was like, well, I think maybe after like my second or third wholesale, maybe, I'm not sure, somewhere around there, I was like, well, I did BRRRR, so I can renovate properties. So I just need to sell one. That's a flip, right? Did that, proved that out. And then, at some point I was like, well, I can wholesale this again and, maybe I'll make 25, 30, but like the guy I'm selling it to, he's banking on making 40. So that could potentially be like 60 to 70 for me. So maybe I should flip this. And so that was my mindset. So I got into that, which wasn't necessarily the case. In some cases it was true, but in others it wasn't, and it wasn't worth it. But that's how you learn, right?
Yep.
And so, did some flips, did some novations. We haven't done a novation for a couple months now. But like a year and a half ago, I'd say within the last 18 months, I was doing a bit of novations. They were, for that moment in time, they were working very well because inventory was moving pretty quickly. And there were enough people that needed help selling, but like were not in a position to handle any of it. They didn't want to deal with the agents. And so it just like worked out pretty well. Those worked out for a while. And some hotels.
And for those who don't know what a novation is, because I know it's pretty common in some of the circles we run in, but everybody might not know what that is. Can you give like a...
Yeah, absolutely. So a novation would be, you could think of it as like in the real estate world, they call it a net listing. So basically, I have a seller that needs to sell their property, but for one reason or another, there's a barrier. Either they don't have the time, or they say they don't have the time. They don't want to work with an agent, or maybe the agent is asking them to get the property up to a certain standard to be able to sell. Really, those are kind of the big ones. There's others, but those are the big ones. And so I step in with the value proposition of, hey, let me take care of selling this property. By the way, I'm going to list it on the MLS because I think a retail buyer needs to buy this thing and wants to buy this thing. I can't flip it. That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm not going to actually own it. I'm just going to help you sell it. And then when you sell it, I'm going to guarantee you're going to get X amount of money. And I take my profit from, whatever else I can sell. So what happens is, let's say I put the property under contract for 200. I'm under contract for 200. So, especially if I'm being ethical and I'm playing by the rules, my customer, the seller, they're going to get that 200. So I need to make sure I sell it well above that 200 so that I can pay my agent. If I'm using an agent, I can pay for the repairs to get the house up to standard, my concessions, anything else plus my fee. And so there has to be a certain amount of spread, but that would be different than a wholesale, where a wholesale, we wouldn't even throw it on the MLS.
Right.
It'd just be contract to contract. And there's other legal instruments we use to make innovation work that are different, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah. And I think one of those things too is, right, like when you wholesale it, like the condition of the property could be anything.
Right.
Right. But when you put it on the MLS, like there's a little bit more, people who are buying through the MLS have a bit of an expectation that it's
absolutely
potentially move-in ready. Right. Yeah. And so there's that is an interesting differentiator, right? If the house doesn't need that much work, it might make sense as an innovation. If it needs a lot of work, it might not, right? Is that, do I have that right?
Yeah. So that's been the case for our market. Even now, and that's why like I said, we haven't done any for a few months. Things are sitting on the market, and the standard in our particular market is so high right now.
Yeah.
It is not, it doesn't make sense to risk the time, because that's what we're risking. I can tell a seller full transparency, like, hey, I might not sell this house. And then the value proposition becomes less, because before the value proposition was, hey, I'm going to get this house sold because we would. Like, right. We would make sure those houses would sell. I mean, we were out there doing crazy things to get the houses sold. It's not as feasible in this market, and it's not worth the time, because on these novations, we had a couple we made $30K on. I think that's probably about the highest, but most of them, it's 10 to 15K, somewhere in there. Whereas like, wholesales can be deeper, flips can be deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you think about like the time and investment with everybody involved and all the moving pieces, for most situations for us, it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense for our sellers first and foremost.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely some nuance to that program, but you said something I want to come back to. What is the craziest thing you've ever done to sell a house?
Oh man. So, geez. I don't know if it's the craziest, but the first one that comes to mind was actually about a year ago. It was and this one comes to mind because for us, there's a lot of teamwork involved. But what we did basically was we had a seller that wanted to get out of their house and they wanted to buy another house. So they called us because they're like, "Oh, you're a home buyer. Like you're going to buy our house." Well, yeah, if we buy your house, where are you going to move to? Well, we're trying to get into this other place, but like we got to sell our house. It's like, okay. Well, then simultaneously we have this other transaction and these two ladies are trying to sell their house and they're like, we need to sell our house because we're under contract on our next house. And like, there's no way, we're going to make it happen, blah, blah, blah. So as these things start to align, we're like, So we put this deal together where the first family buys the second family's house, gives us the first house to take over the debt. So it's basically like sub to sell. And then when we sold it to them, we actually wholesaled them the house. So we made a fee on it. So we help them get out of their house. We buy their house. We take a fee on it. First family gets to move into the house. Second family moves to their new state. And then first family gives us, subject to the house that they're living in. So we take over their debt to allow the transaction to happen. So I don't know about craziest, but that was my favorite because we had an agent working on it. she made a fee. Our entire team, transactions. I don't think I even put one of any of the houses under contract. I think that was our, somebody from our team that did it. I certainly underwrote the deal and influenced the deal for sure. But there's just a lot of people involved, two different title companies involved. And so it worked out for everybody. That would be one, and I guess the reason I say crazy in that sense is because I don't know that the average company would have done a deal like that.
Yeah, for sure. That's a lot of gymnastics to pull off, right? And different, just taking the time to understand that situation. Most people would just be like, I don't have time for that. That's messy. But you dug in, and that's awesome, and found a solution for two families.
Yeah, and it worked out. And that was the joy in it all. Was that we ended up getting them what they wanted. Yes, we made money on it, but like, still looking at it, reflecting back, neither of them would have had an option. I don't know. The timelines were so strict. Like, the one family would have lost the house they had under contract for sure. And the other family probably would have just stayed in their house and never found another house. Like honestly. So yeah, it's definitely gratifying in that sense for sure.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, I know wholesalers kind of can get a bad rap sometimes and just like anything else, there's some bad apples, right? Yeah. But I've seen and through talking to folks like you and many others in some of these groups that we're in, man, there's a lot of good that you can do if you channel it the right way and you hold yourself to a high ethical standard, which I know that you're all about.
Absolutely.
I know we're getting through this, and your story is fantastic. I want to make sure we have time to touch on a few other things. So I know your business today. I know you're doing a lot of wholesale, a lot of flips, keeping some, building a nice rental portfolio. But real estate is not the only business that you're in.
That's right.
Talk to us about what else you're doing, and how, if at all, those two things sort of, if there's any synergies out of those two businesses or things that are, you've learned from one and applied to another. I just think it's neat that you have two very different things going on, somewhat related, I guess, but
yeah, for sure. I love that you mentioned synergy because, the more that I think about it, this would be my justification. Entrepreneurs, we can be kind of all over the place sometimes, right? And not that that's a bad thing. I think some people prefer that and they're okay with it and they're cool with that. I think the important thing is we understand that it can limit you. Like, I don't think anybody would disagree that a surgeon wouldn't be as good of a surgeon if they were trying to be a surgeon and also be a lawyer and also be an astronaut at the same time. Like, this just doesn't make sense. Like, there's no way. And when you have a stark contrast like that, you're like, okay, focus is the way. So I am big on focus. That being said, for me to say, hey, this is the synergy, I would probably go back to skill. And the reason is because a lot of, who I've become through the process of like building these businesses and growing and like even where I want to go into the future is like this realization that business is like my sport. Like, business is the thing that I want to be obsessed about for as far as I can see right now. And I like to win. And so for me, I want to be the best, and not the best comparatively to everybody. I'm not saying that I want to be the best that I can be at business. And so that takes really two things. For me, it takes continuing to grow mentally in my beliefs and then my skills. And so the synergy would be the skills that I build through all these different things that I do. They'll overlap. When I started learning certain marketing strategies in real estate, in my cleaning company, I would apply similar things, and vice versa. Personal management in the real estate company looked different than in the cleaning company, but like leadership was the same. So I'd get to apply the same leadership and like have different ways of like personnel management, right? And so that to me has kind of been the synergy. But in terms of like how they feed each other, yeah, there's a little bit. So right now, I have the real estate company. I own a cleaning company that I'm getting more and more involved in as we scale, and a consulting company. And really, the consultant company started out like a management company. I was doing like fractional stuff and contracting people out to help me with things that needed to be done in Made in America and in Simplify. Made in America is my cleaning company. Simplify is my real estate company. But I didn't have really anywhere to put them, and I don't want to create another liability with a W-2 employee. And so I just kind of like take this fractionalized work and put it on both companies.
Oh, I see. That's how you allocate it back and forth. Yeah.
And then I was like, well, this other person needs help with their business. Like, what if we help them? And I realized like I really like helping people that way. And I love strategy, and I love execution too. But like, a lot of people were struggling with execution because they didn't feel like they understood strategy. So if I could help them with strategy, then their execution would get better. And then I was like, well, if I can get them a result, they'll pay me. So I started doing a little bit of consulting there, like through that whole process. So the cleaning company, which right now, like I said, is more my focus, actually came shortly after the real estate. So kind of taking a little bit of a step back in like my timeline, I very quickly realized, hey, I'm going to run out of cash, or I thought, hey, I'm going to run out of cash. And if I had more cash, there's more opportunities. I could probably keep more of these properties. And I had that W-2 job still in the military, but I was like, well, what am I going to do when I get out? Like, I don't have any cash flow. And so I was like, dude, well, I either got to get a job. And then I was like, nope, I do not want to get a job. And, there was this thought, I wasn't super developed with the real estate company yet. So I didn't think of like, oh, let me build a big company that flips or wholesales or does whatever, all exit strategies and pays myself. And that's what I'll live on. I wasn't quite there yet. And so I was like, well, shoot, like I just need steady cash. I don't even know if I knew what cash flow was at this point, honestly. And I was like, I just need steady cash. And my wife, over the holidays, that same year as we started getting in real estate, she's like, I need some cash. I think I'm going to go clean a couple houses. And she's like, hit me with this idea. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool, whatever. And for her, which I was very open to, she was in this phase where she thought she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So she had gone to school, and she had just graduated, and she was going to be a speech pathologist, and she was kind of like taking a pause, like, I don't know that I really want to do anything. And I was like, okay, if we're single income, whatever, because that all happened before. And so she just was like, yeah, I can just go clean a couple houses. And she made like $500 in the weekend. And she was really happy about it. And then one person told her she did really good, because this is, if you know my wife, she's really good at cleaning and she likes to clean. It's kind of, there's a deeper part of this
Sure.
that goes into like her mental health and stuff like that, which is a huge part of her story and what's helped build this brand to what it is. But the short end of it is she's very passionate about cleaning. That attracted people. And, the next thing you know, she's like, did a couple cleans, pulled in like a couple $1,000s. And I was like, do you want to make this a business? Like naturally, right? And she's like, yeah, I don't know what that means, but sure. And I was like, well, I can help you hire people, and then you can sell more cleans, which is what you really like to do because you like talking to people anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, I'll help you put a couple, I probably oversimplified it. I probably thought it was the easiest thing in the world. And she's like, yeah. So we very quickly did that. And, I think I invested a total, if I remember right, it was $3,000. I think. And it wasn't all up front. It was over like 2 months. And we had all that money back instantly. And so I was like, okay. And we just kept doing that and growing. And I don't know, maybe 6 months in, probably about 6 months in, I was like, holy smokes, we're paying ourselves. So now we have my military income and we have like steady, it had only been 6 months or so, but steady income.
You can see it. You can see it like, if you're projecting it forward, it's like, okay, this is meaningful.
Absolutely. And so I was like, well, maybe we should put a little more focus on this. And, mind you, I'm doing real estate deals. I'm full-time active duty in the military. And so what I'm giving to Made in America, our cleaning company, is it's not a lot, which I think God had planned it that way, because it's almost like, I'm a very like, you will bend to my will type of guy. You can't do that in business.
Yeah.
And it forced me to have some distance. And I think that helped us, honestly. And so, it kind of grew from there to the point where I was like, I think that this could replace my military income. And I could tell my wife believed it too. And I was like, I think at that time, it was either $5,000 or $7,000 a month, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe it was $7,000, but I was like, if we can pull $7,000 from this cleaning company per month and the military goes away, we'll be in the exact same position we're in, but I won't have to work in the military, but we're still doing the same thing, outside the military. And she's like, okay, let's do it. And so that was like our goal. And we met that goal very, very quickly. So like, I knew like, hey, if anything happens with the military, I can just get out.
Now, you got a fallback plan.
Now, problem is during that time, that happened so early on, we experienced lifestyle creep for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, well, we can afford private school, put our kids in private school. Like, we grew. I had to learn how to manage finances better. But what it did was it became real to us. And so that cash flow was important, because then as we got closer to getting out, I realized, hey, this is the cash that I was talking about that I needed for real estate, but I didn't actually need it at that time. It was just extra because we had learned to live on the military. Like, yeah, we had some lifestyle creep, but like, I'm not talking, all the money. Like we still had excess. So I'm like, well, if I can put this into deals. And so like, I put it into some traditional 10%, 20% down deals, and then bird it back out. I put it in a couple of cash deals, bird it back out, start putting in some sub 2 deals. On a traditional subject 2 deal, you might get, let's say you get a property that's like got $1,000 mortgage, but it's going to rent for $2,000, 3% interest rate. You might pay that seller $20,000 to take over that loan. So that's kind of like your down payment, right? So 20,000 could get you into, potentially a cash flowing property with an equity play. And so I started doing things like that. And that was the cash that was allowing me to do that. And it just grew and grew and grew to the point where we see a lot of opportunity in it because we spent a lot of time on the brand.
Yeah.
it's my wife's story. She is the perfect person for that brand and to sell it. And it's like in her wheelhouse. And it's not like she doesn't like doing those things. I like doing those things.
Yeah, it sounds like it's authentic for her.
Exactly. Right? Where I'm more the technical, like behind the scenes guy, which is the stuff that she needs to be done. So we work together in that sense fairly well. Not that it's easy, because it's a really tough thing to do. But we got to this point where I was like, okay, so if we want to be a $10 million cleaning company, I'm just like, man, I can't see that many people in this office. And that this is like kind of my next growth point. I'm like, man, that would be huge. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, through meeting people and experience and everything, I'm like, oh, units. Oh yeah. Now we get into like, managing units. Yeah. Like, oh, locations. Oh, okay. Well, what if I could take this location and replicate it and just start throwing it up? So then that became the strategy. And so that's where we're at right now with that. And that's why I say I'm putting a lot of emphasis on it, because that's what our focus is on replicating locations and scaling out that way.
And is the cleaning business residential?
Yes. So it's primarily residential. We have a small portion of commercial that we still do. And really what it is our avatar is a person that's like one and the same in both of those spaces. Here's what I mean by that. So it's people that are, cannot keep up with their house, do not have the time. They're entrepreneurs, they're doctors, they're lawyers, and they need a professional cleaning company. Well, some of those entrepreneurs also have like workspaces like this that they need cleaned. So it's a very similar type of thing. So they'd say, well, hey, you clean my house. Like, do you want to clean our office too? And it's just a little different than like traditional commercial. We're not getting the big commercial contracts. We don't focus on that. So that's why I say a little commercial is primarily residential. But yeah, our bread and butter is to get your house set to a standard and service it over a period of time, whether that's weekly, biweekly, monthly, and really take that burden off your shoulders. So, we're coming, getting your house set up, everything like that on a regular routine. And that's primarily what we focus on. Like, pretty much like 70% of our revenue.
That's awesome.
Is that.
It's a cool story. I mean, it seems like it's a very natural, it just sort of came together because to your point, like it seems like it was kind of, it was the perfect fit, right? Personalities, and then the opportunity being there, you having a little bit of business experience, also needing the cash for your real estate business. I mean, there's so many ways that sort of plays together. And it sounds like it's an opportunity for you and your wife to work together, but maybe not like, all the way on top of each other together, which is very challenging to do. So, sounds like the cleaning business is growing. You're looking to continue to scale. I know you said you're opening some new locations. The real estate business, obviously the market, kind of has some say in how much you're doing. But I know you've recently kind of pivoted towards more, higher margin, fewer higher margin projects versus, lots of lower margin ones. Yep. Which I think is a really good time in the market to be doing that. Well, what are you looking at as you go forward? What's next? I mean, it sounds like you guys are putting a lot of, attention on the cleaning business because it sounds like you got the ball rolling pretty good on that. But yeah, what's the next step for you guys? What's the next challenge?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this year has been my most challenging year all in all, which I think, it makes sense if you're growing and you're always growing, like you're maybe in the most challenging time at any given moment.
Yeah,
right?
Constantly out of the comfort zone.
Yeah. Right? So I'm hoping that's what it is, but man, it's been tough. The market's been tough. Business has been tough. Working with your spouse is tough. Working without your spouse is tough. Like they're both tough. Like, and I've had some really difficult decisions with the real estate. At a certain point doing real estate in the cleaning company, I got out of the day-to-day fairly quick in the cleaning company. And I was at a point where I wasn't putting a lot of hours in it, but sometimes it'd pull me away. So I'd be like fixated on this problem in the real estate company and working. And then all of a sudden fire, like they would need me in the cleaning company. And I wouldn't build resentment, but I get very frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking like, dude, should I just like bow out of the cleaning company? And you know, I talked to my wife about it, talked to some mentors, and they're like, dude, it's just a season. Like, you know, you're pivoting your focus. Like, what do you expect? You're trying to grow two things at once, right? Which I don't think is advisable. But it's not like I was starting two things at once, right? They're different levels, you know, different development, different things going on. And so I felt that, and I eventually kind of like I dealt with it, focused very heavy on the real estate, and built the initial team because it was just me. And then, you know, then it was me and a VA, then it was me and my project manager, then it was me and project manager, transaction coordinator, you know, got my subcontractors, got my main real estate agent, other real estate agents, so on and so forth. So like I kind of built all that stuff out, turned over a few times, started building a sales team, had an acquisition sales team, turned them over. We started going for another 6 months, turned them over. You know, this is like me learning, this is them learning.
Yeah.
And as we wound down last year, I said, you know what? I need to keep things going because I don't think the answer, and I don't think what I'm being called to is like quit. And I don't want to quit. I like doing real estate. But like there was a part of me that wondered if I was being silly. Like, should I just put all my focus on this cleaning company, or should I just put all my focus on this real estate company? Like, I don't know. And what I resolved to is there's a season for everything, and let's keep the real estate company profitable, but let's not do anything silly. You know, the year prior, I felt like there were a couple risks that just were not very calculated. You know, I think that I got caught up in the, well, you gotta lose money to make money. You gotta do this, you gotta do that. And like, you know, I just silly things like, let's take a bet on this, you know, $30,000 marketing strategy, but then also on this other $30,000 marketing strategy, but you just did them both at the same time. You already tapped on bandwidth, so you're not even paying attention to the metrics of this other one. Like just silly stuff like that I'd done, you know? And so I just said, I'm not doing that this year. Let's stay high margin. Let's stay like slow, steady, stick to the fundamentals. Let's do less better deals, which is funny because like you said, I'm in a mastermind, and that like became the theme for most of the top players in that mastermind. They were like saying the same thing. And I'm like, okay, we must all see similar things. We must all be feeling similar pains. And so that's kind of how I went into the year. And I just said, hey, let's focus on Made in America. And so moving forward, I'm sticking to that. So trying to stay nice and steady throughout the rest of this year. And once I feel like we have a foothold with the team in the cleaning company, because where we're at right now is let's prove to ourselves that we can replicate these locations and create a solid foundation. Once we get to that point, it's about building a team that's, you know, doing the development, like getting the locations planted. If I can get to that point, when I get to that point, I can kind of pivot focus again. And so if I go back to focusing more on real estate, or if, you know, real estate grows into from where it is right now, staying slow and steady, but buying larger assets, which is something I'm really interested in. You know, maybe I go that way. I'm just kind of open, but for right now, I'm trying not to think too far ahead because a lot of times I'll do that, you know? So like for right now, it's like, hey, let's just keep doing good deals, getting in and out of them, like making money, keeping things moving, while most of my focus is over here on the cleaning company and grow from there.
Man, it sounds like you guys with the cleaning company have a really great opportunity to build something that could be sizable, which is super exciting. And then the real estate, I mean, listen, I think, you know, many real estate investors have struggled with, you know, taking on too much risk. I know the marketing channels when you're doing direct to seller, you know, that can get really expensive really quickly. And if you don't have the systems and the team to set up to you know, take all those leads and do something with them, then it is kind of like flushing money down the toilet. And then of course, you know, people get into deals, right? You know, deal junkies. And sometimes it's hard to hold back from wanting to win a great deal and have a fun project to work on. But I think this is sometimes the market tells you when you need to slow down a little. And this is probably a pretty good time to sort of ease off the gas and just, you know, take a measured look and remain disciplined on the real estate side. Because it'll come back around. The season will change in real estate for sure. But, this is a tough market. I think people, and I say this to investors all the time, I think you got to be really careful about what you bite off, because, these are the times that it can come and bite you back. And just being smart about that, thoughtful and intentional. I think that's really smart. But I love your story, and I know you have a call coming up, so I want to be respectful of your time here. But I really love your story, and I love how the dedication to service is like a really core. I mean, just listening to, and we've had a couple other conversations, but like that seems to be very core for you. And it's really neat that you found ways to do that. Of course, the military is an amazing thing. Thank you for your service, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning, but such an amazing way to use that superpower. But then to come out of that, right, and then find other ways to apply it in a way that, because it's going to benefit your family and help you guys continue to grow and build a life that you want for your kids, but also to benefit the community, right? And it's very clear that that's like first and foremost. And then of course, like I think your faith and that aspect really influencing all of those things as well. And I think, kind of taking all that and finding a way to like channel it into something really positive that also, can help you provide a phenomenal life for your family. Like that's so cool. And it's really cool to see what you've built here. I know there's lots more to come. You got a lot on your plate, right? So,
Sure.
But it's been great to get to know you. I know, we got to know each other through 7-figure flipping. So shout out to 7-figure.
That's right.
Those guys are all in Park City right now. You and me are the only ones not there. But, I think, investing in things like that, there's just so much opportunity. And, I think it'll be really fun to kind of see where you guys are able to take it from there. But really great to get to know you now, and definitely want to give you an opportunity also to share sort of how people can follow you. I know you do a podcast.
Yeah.
I know you're on Instagram, right? So how can people get in touch? How can people follow you?
Yeah, for sure. So you can connect with me on Instagram or Facebook. It's going to be Devin Ramos, DevinRamos for Instagram. Same thing for Facebook. I do a podcast you mentioned as well. Hopefully we can get you on there.
I would be honored.
Yeah, that would be great. It's called Die Hard Entrepreneur Stories. So we're just trying to tell stories of, people like you, people like me, and share those with our listeners in hopes that they're able to glean some stuff and learn some things and enjoy the stories as well. And that's where you can find me for the most part. Would love to connect, reach out, DM me. I'll see your DM, and let me know what I can do for you.
And if the people need cleaning, made in America.
Oh yeah, man. If you need cleaning, made in America cleaning services. So that's funny. My wife came up with that one, and
I love it.
I love her. I love her to death. I said, I love that, but like, I don't know. Do you think we're the first ones to do that?
Yeah.
She's like, no, but I don't care. I'm like, okay. So yeah, it's kind of a play on made in America, but it's funny you mentioned the service, because there's, there's the opposites attract thing that my wife and I for sure have going on, but there are also some key things that we're aligned on that, like, I know that's why it works. And I think service, patriotism, community, people are those things, So my wife, like made in America, she's like, like she's patriotic. She loves America. She completely supported me through my entire journey in the military. She's very proud to have served with me, and so, yeah, that is just too natural for her. And I was like, okay.
I think it's awesome. When you first said it, I was like, oh man, I chuckled in the back of my head. I was like, that's a great name.
Yeah.
But no, that's really cool. And I love how authentic all of that is to kind of what you guys are all about. I think it's really neat to kind of see. It doesn't feel forced, right? It sort of seems like these are things that sort of came together the way they were intended. So really awesome, and really appreciate you sharing the story. Yeah, definitely look forward to staying in touch, and more than happy to join your show if there's an opportunity to do so. Would be happy to do that. And in the meantime, well, we'll look out for everybody on the next episode of the Hustle Harder Show. Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having me, man.